With the time being 6:36, we're going to call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Public notice was given that there will be a meeting of the Plan Commission for the City of Blue Island on Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. This is an in-person meeting. There's no Zoom participation or anything? Okay. First order of business is roll call. Chair Petoska is here.
Polcaster here.
David Brown here.
We have a majority of a quorum present. Next order of business is public comment. Are there any individuals wishing to provide public comment at this evening's meeting? All right. Next order of business is old business. Review and approve the plan minutes for April 8th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion to approve.
I have a second. Second by Commissioner Polcaster. All in favor? Aye. All right. I think before we move on to new business, as chair of the Plan Commission, I'd like to make an announcement that I have accepted a position with the City of Blue Island as Director of Finance and Administration. Since I am now a staff member of the City of Blue Island, I can no longer serve on the Plan Commission. So with that being said, I am resigning from the Plan Commission, and we would need to make a temporary appointment for a temporary chair of the Plan Commission. Is there anybody wishing to nominate an individual to serve as temporary?
I'm going to nominate one.
I'll nominate Jason.
I'll nominate Jason as well.
I don't think I can vote on that. I have
And this is just for tonight's meeting. This is just temporary.
Jason, would you take the honor of? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, moving on, new business. For the UTOD ordinance, the Plan Commission reviews an applicant request for a large wall sign within the UTOD district. This is for Premier Suburban Medical Group. The sign will be erected in channel letters, the southwest top portion of the historic building, and the large wall sign underneath the building's northern edge. The UTOD allows for large wall signs, but these types of signs need to be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission on a case basis. Can you present some, Howard, or we have?
No, we have Premier sign here.
All right, sounds good.
Plan Commission, my name is Van Ruggen Signs. With me is Micah Van Ruggen from Van Ruggen Signs and Dan Lofty from Premier Suburban Medical Group. We thank the Plan Commission for hearing our request. Our request, as stated, is for a large wall sign that is required to go through the Plan Commission. And the property is located at 2310 York Street. Premier Suburban occupies an entire floor in that building, and the previous tenant signage has been removed from the same location that we're intending to place our sign. Signs are similar in style, similar in type of fabrication, and similar in size to what was present before for Metro. In your packages, you have received drawings of the sign, calling out sizes, as well as depicting it on a photograph as it will appear when it's finished. I do have some extra copies of those drawings if you the staff report gives a thorough overview of what we're doing. We did submit drawings. One of the drawings in your packet does call out the square footage allowances between the logo, the letters reading Premier Suburban, and the letters reading Medical Group. And those areas total to 69 square feet. If there's any questions regarding the technical aspect of the sign, we're here to answer those questions. Premier Suburban is here as well, if you have any questions regarding the sign from Premier Suburban.
No, thanks. Well done, Howard. Well, the materials look good. The report said these are the only well signs that are going up.
Yeah, the building is without signage right now, and Premier was pleased to become an occupant of the building,
Good,
and had worked it out with the landlord to install a sign where the Metro sign came down.
Sounds good. And as I look at it, there are 5 sort of standards or requirements for large signs. Howard, it looks like there weren't any issues. All right, this one's easy. I like the easy ones. You guys have any questions? All right. Then could somebody make a motion to approve the request for a large wall sign in the UTOD district?
Motion to approve.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Man, if only all plan commission
Right.
meetings were like this for
Thank
you.
you for time.
And I'll have to thank Micah, because he put the packet together, so, you know, I appreciate it, and Howard worked with us very well. We appreciate the time spent
Yeah,
and your approval.
I know signs and plan commissions don't always,
Don't always go this well, that's for sure.
And I just wanted to share, the sign company was nice enough to present us the sign, zoning signs that were posted on the property.
oh yeah, I saw that, yeah.
So, yeah, I worked with Mike on trying to create a Blue Island logo, color, theme, so it's because of the sign company.
Yeah.
And I have 2 other copies to present to the city council for perspective, you know, purchasing more signs from your group.
Excellent. Glad it
Glad to
works
help.
out.
Thank you.
Premier Medical Group chose Blue Island to be one of their homes.
Yes.
I know a lot of the doctors that were previously with DuPage formed the medical group, and I know a lot of people are very happy that you guys decided to make Blue Island.
Absolutely. Some of our positions have been in the community over 20, 30 years, and we're going to continue to grow in this area in the months and years to come. So very excited.
Great. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I think the city's got a hospital to sell you if you want it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Now comes the second one.
All right. I'm gonna go back to my agenda here. All right, our second order of business is an impervious coverage text amendment for the city of Blue Island to adopt in the future. We have Mike Cindy here to present to us. That would modify bulk controls in the zoning ordinance and building form regulations in the Uptown TOD ordinance. Impervious coverage is the amount of hard surface that you can have on a piece of property. And so here we have, we do not have adequate impervious coverage protection, and that could lead to flooding. And there's some other ideas here. And welcome, Mike.
All right, thank you guys. Once again, Mike Cindy, a lifelong resident of Blue Island, also a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals here. And I just shared a document with you guys here. It kind of goes through some background information, why this is important for the city of Blue Island and why I think it should be something that we implement. First thing, localized flooding. We kind of know what that is. Blue Island has localized flooding issues. I've dealt with it. You guys may have dealt with that with a neighbor, family, friend, etc., someone in town. And we're not alone. All right, there's some pictures in there of some localized flooding in Blue Island. But as you scroll through the document there, this has happened, something that's a bigger impact lately because of climate change, right? Climate change, the globe is heating up and ultimately causing these 100-year floods or 100-year rains to happen more frequently. With that, our sewers, our streets, and all that are overwhelmed with water. So, as I look at this, and I look at research on this, what are some ways to address it? There's a couple groups out there, U.S. Geology Society, University of Delaware, some other places have looked at it and said, listen, we need to control this stormwater runoff. Is there a way to address that? And Blue Island has tried. Okay, Blue Island has tried in the past. They've done some things, and they've done some things up on the northeast corner. 119th to 123rd. Western to basically Vincennes to the railroad tracks there. They got a grant almost 8 years ago, in 2013, to kind of address that. And that's probably an area of Blue Island that has the most localized flooding, right? And they've tried to address it and then made some progress in there. So we looked at that, we looked at what other cities are doing. So we kind of flipped through there and we noticed that other groups out there are trying to address this. They've been trying to address it for decades. TARP, or the Deep Tunnel Project, are something that'll open up when streets are overwhelmed with water, have nowhere to go, and ultimately flood out to a place like Thornton Quarry. Well, as we look at that in more detail and look at other cities, you'll see that many cities have what's called a impervious or impervious lot coverage restriction, where a certain lot, a residential lot or commercial lot, cannot have a certain percentage of impervious coverage. As we look at some of these cities like Berwyn, a city of Blue Island compared to a lot, they have different restrictions on there. In that document on page 7, it shows you that depending on the residential lot, it could be anywhere from 50% to 65% impervious coverage. Cities like Oak Lawn, say 50% lot coverage. Evanston has anywhere from 45 to 60%. Arlington Heights has 50 to 65%. Skokie has anywhere from 50 to 70%. Park Ridge has some restrictions. We notice here Blue Island currently does not. Okay, Blue Island currently does not have a restriction on that. And it's not a restriction limiting homeowners, but rather protecting homeowners from water. Okay, protecting homeowners and particularly their neighbors from stormwater runoff. So what I'd like to do is like the city of Blue Island to look at addressing this by hopefully implementing a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. I know the zoning ordinance is going through a review right now. It's approximately 50 years old. And having some type of range, determine what that lot coverage would be, anywhere between a 50 to 65% impervious lot coverage, which will help protect homeowners, help protect home values, and hopefully address the localized flooding issue. So with that, I'll take any questions you guys have about it and take suggestions.
Like this would be for like new construction and things moving forward.
Yeah, new
Nothing
things.
retroactive, nothing has to be torn up, nothing has to be.
Exactly, and it would not impact replacing things. Like for example, you currently have a driveway and you're gonna replace a driveway. Okay, that's not increasing your current lot coverage. If you were now saying, listen, I wanna pave my backyard because I wanna put a big patio in, then we look at, like most cities do, they'll do a lot coverage calculation and say, look at your current lot coverage is maybe 40%, whatever the city decides in terms of limiting, say it's 50%, you can go up to that 10% more, et cetera. But it shouldn't impact anyone's current coverage.
Seems like the size of the lot would matter a lot. So let's say you have a small lot with a large house, right? And you want to, I don't know, put in a patio or something.
Sure.
You may be kind of, it may be an impossibility to reach that 50%.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things I asked you guys about is determine what should that number be? Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 70%? You know, is it based upon your current lot size? Some cities like north where I work at in Glenview, it differs based upon a lot size. Once you get to a larger lot, then that percentage goes down, right? So say you have a 5-acre lot, well, you're not gonna do 50% of that. You're not gonna pave 2.5 acres. But if you have a smaller lot, okay, like you have a city lot like maybe Blue Island has, maybe it's a higher percentage. So that's something we can look at addressing. I think it's one of the things that Howard's looked into. Also looking at what are materials we use, right? Is there a coefficient in front of materials? For example, concrete does not allow anything through, but maybe rocks allow a percentage through. So maybe there's a coefficient that kind of goes in front of that and say, look at, rocks may have a coefficient of say 50% impervious. Concrete has none or 1.0. You know, what does that look like? We don't know what materials look like in the future. We don't know what materials look like in the future, so kind of plan for the head. And more importantly, I mean, it's just an issue in Blue Island. This is a small step to address it, right? This is not going to cure flooding in Blue Island. I know that. It's just a small step forward to kind of address it.
Mike, if somebody might be right above, say the coverage amount is 65%, and somebody ends up, you know, we do the calculation, and they're at 68%. Could they apply for a variance?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we look at. You know, the building department would kind of work with them and say, look at, you know, we're at 68%, the current lot coverage is 65%. Howard can probably speak to that a little more exactly how that works, but a variance or something along those lines for individual concerns.
So, besides adding new definitions, and besides modifying the bulk requirements for the 1971 code, I also put under section 4 a modification to section 8.7 semicolon 4A as an apple, This is the one with the bulk requirements, is to permit any yard or setback less than a yard or a setback required by applicable regulations. So then I put in bold letters, or an impervious coverage of 10% or less of the allowed impervious lot area. So 10% more they can go, I guess.
Sure.
So if they're at 60, right, and they want to do 65, they could do it because it's 10% or less. If it's more than 10%, then I'm going to have to tell them, no, you can't do it. We have to have a hard no, hard line.
Sure.
So if you look at it, what I did was I generated 2 ordinances. The first one is for us, planning and zoning to review, which is basically looking at the percentage and looking at the definition. This is your opportunity to say, no, I don't like this definition, let's change it, or I like it, or let's keep it, and also to look at the percentages, because this is where Michael, Cindy, and I, we were going back and forth. Some municipalities are more conservative, and they're going to tell you, no, you can't cover your lot. But here, it was like a 5% between 50 to 60 or 55 to 60. So this is where we were like debating back and forth. So in this ordinance, what? Yes, right here. So while everyone here is looking at the ordinance, what I did was I generated a second ordinance. This would go through the city council directly. It wouldn't go through planning and zoning. It would be an incentive through the building department to ask for the homeowner to do new flat work. Let's say they're doing a new paved driveway. Can they use different types of materials? And in the ordinance, I go into details about it. And there are, and this is what I was mentioning about pervious asphalt, PA, pervious concrete, PC, permeable interlocking concrete pavers, PICP, or plastic grid pavers, PGP. If they implement this type of material, then they could either get a reduction or a waiver under building permit fee. And the way I structured it was, if it's 50% of the work that's being done with this new technology, new materials, then they could have 50% of a reduction under permit fees. So let's say instead of paying $200, they're only going to pay $100 on a permit application. Now, if they decide to do everything 100% with this new type of pavement materials that I listed, then it's a waiver. Now, this is something that has to go to the city council. We don't have the authority here to waive building permit fees, but this was one of the discussions that Michael and I had about trying to encourage people to start looking at the bigger picture of sustainability and reducing the heat island effect, because concrete, not so much, but asphalt attracts more heat, and also because of the stormwater issue. So that's a step 1, step 2 process. So the step 2 is this ordinance, which I provided for everyone here to look at. And there's also an application, it's called a permit waiver application, which the person would fill out in conjunction with a building permit, and they would tell or they would mention what they're doing. So this is something that I'm going to have to speak with the city council if they want to go forward. It's similar to what we have here with the, if it's a multi-family house and a person wants to reconvert it back to a single family, we waive permit fees for doing that because they're incurring more cost to reconvert their house from a multi to a single family in an R1 zone. So I'm kind of mimicking that ordinance with this one for the impervious coverage. Hence the reason why you see 2 ordinances. Now, my question is this: since we have everyone here, if we could look at the, especially the definition, I think I listed everything that should be considered as impervious coverage. A driveway, a patio. I took out wooden decks because sometimes water seeps through it, but anything that's paving the ground that's artificial, like a shed. So just to backtrack a little bit for anyone here, we do have a lot coverage requirement. Lot coverage only goes for the house and a detached garage or a big structure. Let's say, I don't know, like a shed that's bigger, like 200 square feet. That goes against your lot coverage, which is 40%. Impervious coverage is basically your building, your detached garage, your walkway, your driveway, your patio, anything else that covers the ground. And this is where we're going with this impervious coverage. So, that's just the distinction, between lot coverage and impervious. So in the new code,
Say that again, so is the structures themselves are part of that?
right, the structures, because they're also taking up valuable space, so water's not infiltrating into the ground. So all these communities will say, you have a certain percentage, how big of a footprint your house could be on your property. However, we also have a secondary one that says impervious coverage. So if you decide to build a bigger house within the allotment, then you might have a smaller impervious coverage. If you build a smaller house, you might have more space for a patio. But that's going to come all out of the equation, out of the impervious coverage. So for example, if we have a small lot with a large house and a large garage, when it comes for the impervious, they're going to pretty much be very close to it with this new percentage because they already have two structures that are large. So this is where we're trying to at least limit.
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of neighboring cities have. So it's not something that we are breaking, new territory here. Most cities around us have it.
Right, like
Okay,
Chicago. We looked at
Chicago has it,
Berlin.
Berwyn has it, examples, Tinley, Orland. Does Lamont have something like this? Impervious not right now? Cook County has one
Right, Cook
for rural Cook County. DuPage County has one for all of DuPage County, and then the cities themselves.
And if I'm not mistaken, Cook County was 50%.
The Cook County was 50%.
For the lots that we're used to seeing. Cook County has different requirements because they have lots of single family or R-zone lots, so theirs goes up and down. But would be 50% would be kind of like what we're doing here. We're proposing 60. So if you look at that bracket,
You could pave 60 more, so you'd have 60% of your lot covered.
yes. And that includes the house, the detached garage if you have one, plus everything else that covers the ground. Now, if you're like the example, 62, 63, you could apply for a zoning variance because you're less than 10% of new impervious coverage, and you could apply for a variance. But this is just a mechanism to start to deal with
It's like if you
stormwater.
repurpose common brick, and kind of laid that out, that would count as non-impervious, pervious, how would that count?
Well, this is still where we're finagling with the coefficient because we're looking at different standards.
Yeah.
It's like 15%, pervious versus,
Yeah, it depends on what
0%.
material, right? Concrete doesn't let anything flow through it.
Right.
Right, but there are other material, like if you hit a stamped concrete pad versus a brick pad,
Right.
well, brick is gonna let some water through, right? So then you put a coefficient in front of that, and we don't know what that coefficient is yet, but look at that and say, look, you have a brick pad versus a concrete pad, more water is gonna flow through.
Or for example, if you have planted areas, those are much more absorbent than just, bare ground.
Yeah.
so,
Just trying to address the stormwater. I mean, it's an issue in Blue Island, right? Stormwater is definitely an issue in Blue Island. This is just a small step in that direction.
Understood.
So-
We've also seen Blue Island make things infinitely more difficult than they need to be.
Yeah.
so
That's
for
fine.
example, the coefficient stuff that we're talking about, that's going to be something we're going to have to hammer out with the building department, with our engineer, and create a table or something. So when a person comes to the counter and says, well, what about if I do this? Then we'll look at the little chart. It's like, okay, you have a coefficient rate of like 15% that allows for water to seep into the ground. Now, you have to keep in mind, because I've dealt with this in New Jersey and my other municipalities that I work for, yes, pervious pavement, pervious concrete is great, but eventually it starts to fill up if you don't vacuum and remove that accumulation. So eventually that's going to give way down the road, but this is just a step in that process.
But there's nothing on the books yet.
Nothing on the books yet. And this is something that I am proposing in the new zoning code. It's just he beat me to the punch to it.
So the zoning is almost 50 years old, right? 1971?
Yes.
So just one of the things we want to update.
What's up?
It's just one of the things we want to try to update,
Sure.
Mike, is lot coverage this, I know we're looking at definitions of impervious coverage, but is lot coverage?
Yeah, lot coverage is in the, lot coverage is actually is not in the, it's in the bulk requirement, but it's not a zoning definition.
Yeah, so to that end,
Put a definition,
probably if you're trying to make a distinction,
Yeah.
that it, because, you could say if there was a 40% coverage, this is actually expanding the amount of coverage on a lot in some ways, because if there's no definition of lot coverage, there's nothing to say that a driveway, a sidewalk, and a
Right.
patio doesn't fall under that coverage.
Right. So the way I've tackled it, when I do have people ask that question,
Yeah.
I pull like a generic definition that most
Yeah.
planners will use and say in most communities, lot coverage is this. You know, of course, you have that outlier that says lot coverage is also impervious coverage, but in most cases, it's always the structures that are built on the property.
Yeah, I would recommend making that distinction for folks. I think it's, I support like, not including decks.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think, some communities do for sure.
Park Ridge
Yeah.
does.
Where I
Evanston,
work, they
Evanston
do.
does, yeah.
It's a pain. Yeah.
It's a pain.
Yeah,
Right,
don't-
because they
don't
argue
do
with
that.
you about the deck.
Yeah.
It's a matter of maybe what's underneath that deck. Is that
Right.
deck, is it put on top of a concrete pad?
Right,
That's
concrete
different
pad, then
versus,
that's an easy one.
that's different versus it's just two pillars
Yeah.
holding the
Yeah.
holding the
No,
deck up.
But Jason and I will look at questions about decks and swimming pools, right?
Yeah, a lot of those.
A pool collects water, yes, but it's artificial. Eventually, it's going to topple over, it's going to spill over.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, on that,
lots of decks, lots of pools.
on that note, Mike, what is this 11th acre wetland?
Jason, can you explain a little more? That was back in 2013.
Where at?
I guess where is it?
The Blue Island Blue Water Plan. That was the grant they got. That's straight from the Blue Island City website, blueisland.org/blue water.
Where are you looking at? Yeah.
Page 5, top of page 5.
What has Blue Island done about it?
So that was the grant they got up there on top.
Bullet point 1. I'm just curious what that is.
11 acres would be literally 88% of 100% there's a dedicated 11 acres wetland at the office. The city owns that.
Yeah, no, it is. Like, I think that was part of a plan to address the combined sewer, and that you would put it, they were gonna put in a separate storm sewer that would discharge into a wetland.
That was joint product.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Blue Island has done a lot of investment in green infrastructure for sure. I'm with Dave, keep it simple. As Eric mentioned too, you know, when you do include green infrastructure, there maybe is also an opportunity for a bonus there, because you are capturing more stormwater. You're keeping it out of the combined sewer, which
Sure.
is the goal of it. So, you know, they're, again, not looking to make things complicated, but I think that's a good point, Eric. If you're using native plants, for example, in green infrastructure, you're actually improving your stormwater.
Just trying to make a small step in direction. That's all we're trying to do
Somewhere
here.
else
That's all we're trying to do.
Because where else did you, if so, as part of the bonus, right? There was some bonus if you use.
Sustainable material. let's
Yeah,
call it like that.
maybe consider native landscaping, a rain garden or something,
Alright.
one of those bonuses.
I could look into it.
There you go.
Rain garden, swells.
Yeah, because if you planted a 5-foot concrete walk, but you put, like a bioswale on either side of it, the water actually is, being incorporated, being.
Right, it's going to be detained and
Yeah.
it's going to drain into the ground, but there's grass or materials to kind of clean it and then slow down
Sure.
and infiltrate into the groundwater.
So maybe there's a little bonus there. That could be another way where if somebody's looking at doing something and they're near the edge, okay, well, if you do a rain garden here or something like that, you pitch it towards that rain garden, you're actually probably.
And this would be under the building department, right, under a building permit.
I don't have that answer. I'm just throwing it out as a suggestion.
No, because
that
these are the
I-
questions that we'll
Yeah.
get at the counter.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm over the percentage by like 1 or 2%. Can I do a swale? Can I mitigate it?
yes,
And that could be part of that waiver or reduction that I'm also mentioning,
yes.
as an incentive to start encouraging people to look differently.
Would that include businesses that?
No, not at the moment. What I did was R1 and UTOD. If you look at the ordinance for that waiver and reduction, is only R1 and UTOD. The reason why, because R1 is our most popular zoning district here. It incorporates a lot of the geographic area in Blue Island, and of course the UTOD in the sense that it's built up in this mixed use. I thought about C1-2, C1 zone, which is kind of a mixture of the UTUD and R1. That's a hard one because a lot of it is already built. Houses, businesses. So I just wanted to stay clear because then people are going to say, what about C2? What about others? You see, part of the site plan requirement, chapter 163, people have to provide open space for green areas. So that's why I'm not really targeting the commercial aspect or industrial. This is more for residential because we have a lot of people paving and they like to pave the whole rear lot.
So it impacts the commercial districts in the sense that there is a recommended impervious coverage.
Right,
for
10%.
the other than C1.
10%, which you could also incorporate if they're doing a new parking lot, that chapter 163 landscaping requirement, which is 5 and 10%, depends what they're proposing to do. My idea is this, is
Would required landscaping count towards?
yeah, towards the,
Yeah. No,
going
that's good.
against your
Yeah.
impervious coverage. So the idea is this, we're trying to get away from a parking lot, that's a gas station that's totally paved to, okay, you could have your pole sign, your monument sign, but you need to have a bigger area with some green space, and this is where I'm looking at a 10% of your lot area or an area that we could have some green space because basically everyone's paving as much as they can. Sure.
I'm curious, the lot area, I'm looking here, R1 minimum, everybody has a different lot probably in Blue Island, 4,300 square feet or so, 60% impervious. I'd just be curious, not to go too far down the path, like picking some random homes or addresses in town and kind of seeing what's like existing, like how much coverage is already really out there, I don't know how much coverage I have on my house,
Right.
but that's just a curiosity thing, not a requirement.
So what I've noticed is we're all over the place. Sometimes we have houses that are, kitty corner to a corner and everything else is green. Sometimes we have a house and we have a parking lot where people are parking their commercial vehicles that they take to work. So it could go either way. I've seen a mixture of different things. The thing is this, is the older lots, the lots that are closer to each other is the one that I have more of a concern. Because if the lots are topography speaking at a higher grade, then the person next door will capture all the stormwater, and that's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also looking at maybe having a setback for like patios or driveways, 4 or 5 feet from the property, so at least water could collect on the side instead of going onto someone's property. But then that was going to become too complicated, so the impervious coverage was the better way to go with it. Because Michael and I, we were talking about that, about if a person wants to pave their entire rear lot up to the property line, there's nothing in the code that says you can't do that.
No.
I could suggest, we could have a meeting with neighbors, but we're at the mercy of the homeowner. So the impervious coverage will try and work and try and alleviate that.
So at the end of the day, the proposal here for R1, with the residential, every residential zoning district in all the residential areas in Blue Island. So there's currently 40% lot coverage, which we'll define as primary and accessory structures.
Yes.
And then impervious coverage would be up to 60%.
So you got
So for like the lake, that's hard surfaces is impervious to water. So your driveways, well, I could read it, yeah. Your driveways, streets, parking pads, as you mentioned. But it also includes swimming pools, patios, would be like another 20%.
Well, the patio, depending on what you're using.
The materials, yeah. So then you look at, is your patio a wood deck? Is your patio with permeable pavers?
Right.
Or do you have like stones, but then you have lots of like maybe 3 inches between the stones, the large
Right,
stones?
right.
So that's going to absorb more water versus everything, just
Right.
paved patio. I don't know. If the commission doesn't feel very comfortable, we could table it until the next meeting and get comments, suggestions. It's up to you.
So just to make sure I got it, we're talking about 40%. And
At the end of the day, it's 60%,
Right.
because 40% is for,
40% permeable.
yes, yeah, if you want to look at it that way. So, yeah.
Has to be permeable.
Right.
So if you had that 4,300 square foot lot, what's that, 1,700 square feet would be left.
Yeah. For
Green.
For new projects only.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Well,
you
new
would have
proj-
to calculate your existing
Right.
impervious surface.
You say, listen, I want to put this patio in my backyard. Building department would do a calculation with that and say, look, if you're within this range, you're good to go. Let's go forward with other restrictions, or you're not. Let's look at how we address that, whether it's different material or like putting in a rain garden, something else to kind of help address.
And so tonight, are we trying to vote on the actual ordinance or the details of the, or we'll vote on it and the details come later as far as what surface, what is permeable and not permeable and so forth, and what degree and what percentages are. Is that right?
So as part of the agenda, as part of the advertising, I presented 2 ordinances, one for us, one for the city council to review for the reduction and waiver. This is just to start the conversation. Michael was presenting. If everyone feels, yeah, I think this is a great thing, we could vote for it and just go forward to the city council if zoning board of appeals approve it afterwards. If you guys want to spend another month thinking about it and saying, hey, you know, let's think about it, let's, you know, have a conversation with Howard, let's send Howard emails of, you know, examples. I'm not opposed to, you know, introducing it tonight and tabling until next month for an approval.
I don't feel like I need to table it, but
No, yeah.
I am curious how these different surfaces will be defined.
And there's something for city council, kind of over the lawyer to define it. We don't decide that, right? It's not something I come here as a resident and say, here's the definition.
Right.
It's something Howard works on, the city council flushes out, you look at other municipalities. That's why I want to give you some examples, say, look at, here's what other cities are doing. I think we should have something similar. Let's come together as a consensus, move forward with it, and then they kind of hash out the details.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting making it like a condition, but just in your report to the zoning board, you know, maybe consider a definition of lot coverage.
Right, lot coverage.
And if like stormwater best management
Right,
practices,
that's
AKA
fine.
green infrastructure, would count towards some reductions, whatever.
So what you have here is the ordinance. You're voting for the ordinance component, which is basically you're telling a property owner now you only are allowed to cover 60%, generally in an R1. There's other percentage, it depends on the different zones that you're located.
This is with the 10% variant?
Well, yeah, because that's also, in my ordinance, I'm also looking at a variance, because currently, if you apply for a variance, you can't, because there's no impervious coverage variance to apply for. So I have included another 10%, so at worst, 70% will be covered if it goes through the variance process. If a person really needs that pool and patio in their backyard and they don't want to go with sustainable materials to reduce it, then they could go through that process. But if it's like 12% over, no, because I have to tell them what the ordinance says, what the variance says is 10%. So that also puts a cap or a limit.
I think, you know, I don't want to belabor variations, but I think most homeowners in Blue Island would have an honest hardship, you know, in the sense that they didn't build their home.
Right.
They inherited the patio and the garage and whatnot, and so I want a pool. I can't do nothing about the stuff that was already there before me, so I think you would have a pretty simple variation, in my opinion.
Right, simple variation, but now this starts to have a conversation, you know, between the, let's say, me, the planner, or the building official at the counter, saying, you know, are you really diehard about having this patio that's been here for like 15, 20 years? This might be the time to reduce that patio to put your pool. So now you open the conversation about doing more with their lots versus, oh no, this is what I want. And there's really nothing for me to say at the counter, no, you can't do that.
Right.
I have to approve it. Even though a neighbor next door might incur the externalities of more stormwater because that person's at a higher elevation by maybe 1 or 2 inches. And that's the problem. how I've been trying to deal with it, I tried to get everybody together, the neighbors together with the property owner, see if we could have a compromise or a consensus. You know, provide some green space around your patio.
Right.
But this pretty much gives it at least something for us to hang our hats. So the ordinance that you're looking at is basically the definition, the bulk requirements for both the UTUD and the 1971 code, and the variance process. Has nothing to do with coefficients, waiver, or reductions. That's something that's going to have to be discussed at the city council level about looking at, 50% versus 100% new sustainable materials and what type of materials you could use and stuff like that. So ours is pretty, cut and dry. It's zoning we're looking at.
I think, maybe another thing to look at, Mike, if you present to the zoning board or whatever, are some existing conditions to see how this, might work with, you do it for your own home or my home, whatever, just to see where it's at. When I look at Berwyn, I don't know all their districts, R1, R2, R3, R4, but R4, they all have the same minimum lot area. It is 85% max impervious, so considerably more than we're considering here. So I don't know when we look at what Evanston does, there's 3 zoning districts, R1, R2, R3. I don't know what the lot areas are of any of those. I just think it'd be good to know before we adopt something, like how it's gonna work, pick 10 houses in town and see, hey, you might think it's already covered, but they're only at 50%, or they're only at 40%.
You take in, you look where we just bought, and then the house next to us has this huge lot. That's there's been a lot of cut and paste, that's gone on in the city historically. So it is, and I think that's my big kind of on this whole thing, is that, it's not, it's not, the community wasn't founded in the 1950s where it's like, oh, this is just how it goes. There's been a lot of Frankensteining of properties. So I think my concern is that a one-size-fits-all is where it just gets difficult. But no, it's I like it. And if there was common dignity in the world, we wouldn't need an ordinance like this, but there isn't, so here we are. So no, I'm on.
I think it's up for city council to decide, not for us. We just kind of push it forward to zoning. It's part of the looking at a zoning ordinance is 50 years old. Our new administration wants to review these things. I'd love them to look at those types of things.
I agree.
And trying to address this problem that is more prevalent now than it was 10 years ago. And unfortunately, global warming probably more prevalent in the future than it is today.
Sure.
So we just have to start to address it.
No, it's proactive, and I appreciate it.
So how do you feel about voting for the ordinance, or you want to?
Yeah, so does this go to the zoning board or go?
Yeah, zoning board will
So
appear afterwards.
Making a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals?
Yeah.
To consider.
This ordinance.
Yes, I vote yes. So.
All right, but let me
Or
go back to my agenda.
you sure you don't want more, like another month to look at cases, at examples here in Blue Island?
I would just ask that you present that to the zoning board, and let them look at it.
So what we can do is, I guess the planning commission can vote for it, and then zoning will review it tonight, and then a month later.
Oh, zoning board tonight?
Yeah,
Zoning is
Kimberly is right there, zoning
Well,
chairperson.
then just share what we,
We're right here. 2 out of 3 zoning are right here. So.
hey,
We
congrats.
can include that in the memo to the city council.
Yeah. They can definitely something good for them.
Yeah, I think, just a little bit more info. In principle, it's smart, but, and some of it too, I'm just trying to cut off what, questions people might have.
Sure.
Just kind of be proactive about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm all for it in principle. It's just that this could put some property owners in a bad spot if their lot coverage is already large.
Jammed up, yeah.
Puts them in a spot where they can't ever do anything.
It's kind of thing. It's like I'm trying to make a home improvement, but I can't. And, there's a million what ifs. So
It seems like if there was some sort of ratio of what your current lot coverage is, if that could be a factor in how, in the percentage that it can be, impervious or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. your lot currently is 70%, when you're gonna go 80%, you're only raising it 10%, you're over our proposed.
You're over,
Right.
you're already over.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, I just wanna make it a positive step.
Yeah.
No, of course.
Okay, so, with that in mind, is there a motion to recommend ordinance, amending ordinance 2151 and ordinance 2012-185, commonly referred to as the Blue Island zoning code of 1971 for the city of Blue Island, Cook County, Illinois?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, very good.
Thank you guys. I want to thank the new administration for addressing the problem of longer than I've been allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, having gone through new business, commissioner concerns? None? Where do we start, Dave?
No.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we are adjourned at 7:22 PM. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.